Welcome to Skyline's second episode tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Driti Atri. Tonight we have 7 big international stories. Some will affect your job. Some can affect your investment. Some can change the price of the products that you buy. And some may even change the future of India's economy. So stay with me till the very end because every story tonight, it is connected to the next one. And together they reveal a much bigger picture. So let's start with our first story. Can you imagine waking up one morning and finding out that the rules of global trade, it has suddenly changed overnight? Well, that's exactly what has happened. US President Mr. Donald Trump has introduced a massive new trade policy targeting about 60 nations. The United States has introduced fresh tariffs under Section 301 of the Trade Act. In simple words, America has decided that goods coming from many countries will now become more expensive when they enter the US market. Now you may be wondering why somebody sitting in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru or even Indian living in New York City care about tariffs here. You should, because tariffs decide where companies manufacture products, where factories are built, where investment go and ultimately where jobs are created. And this is where India has received some unexpectedly good news. That's right, many of America's biggest manufacturing competitors, including China, Vietnam, Japan, South Korea and Brazil, have been placed in a higher tariff category. Well, their products entering the United States will face about 12.5% tariff. However, India managed to secure a lower 10% tariff. It may sound like a small difference to you, but in global business, even 2.5% advantage, it can change billion-dollar investment decision. So why did India receive better treatment? Well, according to the US, India recently changed its foreign trade policy and introduced stronger restriction on products that are linked to forced labor. Now, because of this particular policy change, the US shifted India in a lower tariff group along with nations like the United Kingdom, Canada and Mexico. Now think about how multinational companies make decisions here. If 2 countries manufacture the same product, but one country's exports face lower tariff, where do you think companies will invest? Naturally, they will prefer the cheaper option. That makes India far more attractive for global manufacturers. Now, this could become a major opportunity for India's electronics industry, its engineering companies, pharmaceutical manufacturers, textile exports, and many global capability centers that are already expanding across cities like Bengaluru, like Hyderabad, Pune, Chennai. Well, for Indian professionals, this story, it is bigger than trade. More factories can mean more jobs. More exports can mean more foreign investment. More investment can strengthen manufacturing, and stronger manufacturing, it can help India's economy grow faster. But before we celebrate too much, remember this: India still has to pay a 10% tariff. That means exporters will still face additional costs. While the advantage, it is relative, India is simply in a better position than many of its competitors here, not completely free from the new trade barrier. And yes, there is another interesting angle here. Well, these new tariffs also protect certain important products, energy supplies, fertilizers, some strategically important goods that have been kept outside the tariff framework. Well, this means America is trying to punish very selected imports while making sure its own supply chain that remains running. Experts believe that this could slowly shift manufacturing away from parts of East Asia and bring more investment towards India. Whether that happens on a large scale, that depends on how companies respond over the coming months. But wait, one thing is definitely clear: Washington's latest decision, it has already opened a new chapter in global trade, and India finds itself in a stronger position than many expected. Well, for Indian businesses, for exporters, and for the millions of professionals who are working in manufacturing and technology, this is a story worth watching very closely. Now, let's move from trade to energy, because sometimes a single barrier on oil, it can change the entire economy. And that's exactly what is happening today. Imagine that you wake up tomorrow morning, petrol prices go up, flight tickets become more expensive, grocery bills start rising, delivery charges, it increases. even your electricity bill, it could be affected. You may think that these are separate problems, but in reality, they all begin with one thing: oil. And right now, oil is becoming expensive once again. Brent crude has crossed $100 per barrel mark after fresh attacks in the Red Sea. According to reports, Houthi rebels they targeted Saudi oil tankers, creating panic across one of the world's busiest shipping routes. Soon after that, the US President, Mr. Trump, he warned Iran of what he called major military punishment, accusing Tehran of supporting proxy attacks in the region. Now, you might think, why does fighting thousands of kilometers away matter to somebody who's living in India, the US, Canada, or Europe? Right? Because almost every single nation depends on oil. And when there is fear that oil supply could be disrupted, markets react immediately. Traders begin buying oil in anticipation of shortages. Prices shoot up. In fact, shipping companies become nervous. Insurance costs increase. In the meantime, everything becomes expensive, and within days, that extra cost, it reaches ordinary people like you and me. Reports say that shipping insurance rate in Red Sea have already jumped sharply. Many cargo ships are avoiding the risky route and traveling around Africa instead. Well, that journey is much longer. It consumes more oil. It takes more time, and every extra day at the sea adds to the final cost of product that reaches stores across the globe. Now, for countries like India, this becomes an even bigger challenge. India imports a large part of its crude oil it consumes. So when international oil prices rise, India's import bill, it also increases. That puts a lot of pressure on Indian rupee, and it can make imported goods even more expensive here. The impact is not limited to India, by the way. In the US, expensive oil creates another problem, and that problem is inflation. Higher fuel prices usually mean higher transportation costs. Businesses spend more to move the goods. Airlines pay more for fuel. In fact, manufacturers spend more on production. Eventually, consumers pay the price for almost everything. And when inflation rises, the US Federal Reserve faces a difficult decision here. Instead of cutting interest rate, it may decide to keep borrowing costs high for a longer period of time. And that means home loans remain expensive, car loans stay costly, business delay investment, and technology companies become more cautious with hiring. And that is why many economists, they closely watch oil prices. They don't just see a commodity, they see a signal that what could happen to the global economy in coming months. For Indians working in the US, specifically those in the tech sector, this is an important development for you. Higher interest rate increases pressure on companies to control the cost. And when companies look to reduce expenses, hiring often slows down. Sometimes layoffs can also increase here. Investors are also becoming cautious, by the way. Stock markets usually dislike uncertainty. Whenever there is fear of a wider conflict in West Asia, markets become volatile. Some investors, they move towards safer assets, while others wait for more clarity before making the big decision. At the same time, the biggest question, that is not just whether oil will remain above $100. The real question is whether this regional conflict will become even bigger. If tensions continue to rise here, energy prices could remain under pressure, and the impact could be felt from New York to New Delhi. One thing is clear here: a missile fired in West Asia, it does not remain in West Asia. Well, it travels through global market. It reaches oil prices, affects inflation. In fact, it influences interest rate, and finally lands in the pocket of ordinary Americans. And that is how deeply connected today's world has really become. Now let's move to our third story tonight, and this one, it is not about trade. It is not about oil, it is about diplomacy. A relationship that has become stronger over the years has suddenly come under a lot of pressure because of one tragic incident. India and the US are often described as strategic partners. They work together in defense, tech, in fact, trade, the Indo-Pacific region. Leaders from both the nations regularly speak about strengthening their ties. But even the strongest partnership, it faces difficulty. And today, one such moment, it has arrived. According to reports, India's Ministry of External Affairs summoned senior US diplomat Jason Meeks after a US military operation reportedly resulted in the death of 3 Indian seafarers abroad on a commercial vessel in Gulf of Oman. Well, think about this for a moment here. These were not soldiers who were fighting on the battlefield. These were Indian crew members who was simply working on a commercial ship. They had families waiting for them back home, like thousands of Indians who work across world's ocean. They were simply doing their jobs. But suddenly they found themselves caught in the middle of an international conflict. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, he also raised the whole matter directly with the US Secretary of State, Mr. Marco Rubio. India made it clear that attacks on civilian commercial vessels are unacceptable and that international maritime law must be respected here. And this is why the whole incident, it is receiving so much attention. It is not about one ship. It's about international rule, diplomatic trust, and the safety of civilians during military operations. And yes, there is another reason why this story matters. India supplies nearly 12% of the world's commercial seafarers. Indian sailors work on cargo ships, oil tankers, container vessels that keep the global trade moving. Every day, thousands of Indian seafarers sail through dangerous waters to ensure goods reach countries across the world. If conflicts continue in the Gulf region, shipping companies may face high insurance costs, longer route, and operational delays. That means transporting goods that becomes more expensive. So once again, businesses pay more, consumers pay more, and global economy feels the pressure here. The timing, that is also very important. India and the US are already discussing trade. In fact, they are discussing defense cooperation, new investment opportunities. So any diplomatic tension, it has the potential to slow down these whole discussions. So the question is, does this mean that India-US relations are now breaking down? No, not necessarily. Mature partners often disagree, but incidents like these, it tests how both governments handle difficult situations. The coming days will reveal whether diplomacy can prevent this issue from becoming a larger dispute or not. But for the Indians living abroad, specifically those who are working in logistics, shipping, global trade, this story is more than international politics. It's a reminder that geopolitical conflict can directly affect ordinary people who are working. One diplomatic incident, one military operation, and suddenly global trade, energy market, international relations all become connected. Well, that is the new reality of today's world. But while governments are dealing with diplomatic tensions at the sea, security agencies on the land have launched another major operation, this time involving an American citizen of Indian origin. Our fourth story is about borders, identity, and a lesson that every NRI, OCI card holder, and foreign passport holder should understand very carefully. A major operation was carried out near the India-Nepal border. During this operation, security agencies arrested Manbir Singh Dillon, a US citizen from Los Angeles, along with another accused linked to the Waris Punjab Day group. Officials say that they discovered a valid American passport, Bank of America cards, and a California driver's license. But they also allegedly found forged Indian identity documents, including Aadhaar card and PAN cards. This whole thing, it immediately turned into a routine security operation into a serious criminal investigation. Many people outside India, they often assume that traveling between Nepal and India, it is simple because the two nations share an open border. That is true, but only for Indians and Nepali citizens under the bilateral treaty. The rules are completely different for foreign nationals here. If you are an American citizen, a Canadian passport holder, a British citizen, or hold any other foreign passport, you cannot simply cross into India through land route without following India's immigration laws. You must enter through authorized immigration checkpoints using valid travel documents such as your passport, OCI card, and your visa. Well, this case, it also highlights another important issue here, and that is document fraud. Indian authorities say that possessing or using forged Indian identity documents while holding a foreign citizenship, it leads to serious legal consequences. These include criminal charges and possible cancellation of OCI privileges if it is applicable. Here, many overseas Indians, they are unaware of any important rule here. Once you become a foreign citizen, your Indian passport must be formally surrendered. Keeping or using documents that you are no longer legally entitled to, it can create serious legal complications for you. But this case is also related to Khalistan, so it's a sensitive issue for India right now. Security agencies are also becoming far more alert than before. Across the US, governments are tightening border checks, increasing digital verification, and sharing intelligence more closely. Whether you are traveling for business, tourism, or just for the sake of coming to India for your personal purpose, be aware of Indian government. Well, for millions of NRIs or illegal migrants, this story carries one simple message. Never take immigration law lightly. Carry the correct document, follow official procedures, and never rely on shortcuts that could create lifelong trouble for you. One mistake at the border, it can lead to months of legal trouble, damaged travel records, and years of complications. In today's world, compliance is no longer optional, it is essential for you. Now, let's return to West Asia because while governments are busy making diplomatic statements, financial markets are reacting to something bigger. Oil prices. And once again, the entire world is watching every single move in the Gulf. Well, for weeks, the whole conflict in West Asia, it has been getting worse. Military operations continue, commercial ships are facing security threat, important sea routes are under a lot of pressure, and now the result is visible in the global oil market. Brent crude, it has crossed about $100 mark once again, as I told you in the second story. But this time, it is not just the price of the oil that is making headlines. It is also the political message coming from Iran. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, he has openly claimed that the United States strategy has backfired. According to him, instead of bringing stability, military action in the region have pushed oil prices higher and created more economic pressure on Western countries. Now, whether one agrees with that statement or not, that's not an issue. One thing is certain here. The numbers are speaking for themselves. When oil crosses $100 a barrel, the impact is not limited to petrol pumps. It spreads everywhere. Airlines spend more on fuel, shipping companies spend more on transportation, manufacturers pay more to produce goods, supermarkets pay more to stock products, and finally, ordinary families end up paying higher prices for everyday items. Think about it like a chain reaction. One conflict in West Asia leads to expensive oil. Expensive oil leads to higher transport costs. Higher transport costs, it makes goods more expensive. Higher prices, it increases inflation. And when inflation rises, well, central banks hesitate to reduce the interest rate. And that's exactly what economists, they are worried about today. Reports suggest that rising oil prices, it could force the US Federal Reserve to keep interest rate higher for a longer period of time. That means mortgages remain expensive, business loan becomes costly, and country and companies think twice before making new investment. Now think about Silicon Valley, think about Seattle. Think about thousands of tech companies that borrow money to build AI infrastructure, data center, and new products. Here if borrowing becomes more expensive, companies immediately begin looking for ways to reduce cost. Unfortunately, one of the easiest costs to cut is hiring, sometimes even jobs. Well, for Indians in the US, and specifically on H-1B visa, this becomes an important issue. Job stability is extremely important. Well, if hiring slows down or layoff increase, thousands of skilled professionals, they could once again face uncertainty. And yes, there is another impact that Indians should watch closely: the rupee. India imports a large amount of crude oil. So when oil becomes expensive, India's import bill increases. That puts pressure on Indian currency. A weaker currency, it can make import costlier and affect businesses across different sectors. And that is why we say that oil is not just an energy story. It is an inflation story, it is a job story, it is a housing story, and for millions of Indians living abroad, it is also a financial planning story. Well, every missile fired in the Gulf, every tanker attacked, every jump in the oil prices eventually reaches the wallet of ordinary people. And this is how connected today's global economy has become. But yes, while the entire world is worried about oil, another diplomatic claim from Iran, it has grabbed global attention, this time involving one of the biggest technology companies on the planet Earth. Our next story takes us to Bahrain, where emergency sirens echoed across the country after reports of fresh Iranian drone attack. According to Iranian military claims, drones targeted Sheikh Issa airbase during what Iran described as another phase of its military operations. Here, Iran said that the targets included aircraft hangars, fuel storage facility, military equipment depot, and building used by the US forces. But one claim immediately caught the global attention. Iran's IRGC, they claim that an Amazon Web Service or AWS data center in Bahrain had also been damaged during the operation. The images quickly spread across social media, raising fresh questions about whether critical digital infrastructure could become part of the future conflict or not. Now, it's very important to note that claims made during conflict often require independent verification. Different countries release different versions of events, and information can change as more details emerge. Still, the story highlights something very important. Modern wars are no longer fought only on the battlefields. Today, airports, ports, communication centers, satellite network, and even data centers have become strategically important. Think about how much of the world depends on cloud computing today. Businesses store their data online, banks process transactions through digital systems, hospitals maintain patients' record on servers, government depend on digital infrastructure. So if these critical facilities are disrupted, then it will affect everything. And this is why tech infrastructure has become an important part of this whole confrontation. Countries are now investing not only in stronger armies, but also in stronger security, in stronger communication, in stronger digital network. Because future conflicts may target computers and data just as much they target the tanks and fighter jets. With that, we come to an end of tonight's Skyline, ladies and gentlemen. I am Driti Atri. Stay cautious, stay updated, and I will see you on Monday.